One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special called the DEI Special.
Welcome back to Pop Flash, where we bring you the latest in celebrity drama, scandals, and shocking controversies. Today we dive deep into the wild world of Rachel Zegler and the aftermath of South Park's brutal parody of the Snow White remake.
Now active involves more to do with both South Park Studios and Paramount, and what they recently did toward both Zegler and the Disney company for their Snow White film. It turns out that both Trey Parker and Matt Stone are already preparing for the DEI special that is set to serve as a sequel to the Panderverse.
This one's a roller coaster, folks. Rumors say that Rachel Zegler lost it after South Park took aim at her and the controversial Snow White film. In their notorious DEI special, the hit animated show mocked Zegler, portraying her as an unhinged diva who couldn't stand the original 1937 film.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway, and that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
And let's just say the internet didn't hold back on this one. Rachel Zegler's comments about modernizing Snow White caused an absolute uproar. When she boldly said, "It's no longer 1937, people were already bracing themselves for what came next. But she didn't stop there. She also stated that Snow White won't be saved by the prince.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
An iconic part of the classic story that's been cherished for decades. Instead, Zegler announced that Snow White would focus on becoming a leader. Well, folks, according to rumors, this statement lit a firestorm. The backlash was immediate, with fans of the original 1937 film voicing their outrage on social media. Zegler's comments were seen by many as a disrespectful jab at a movie that shaped generations.
Snow White is the first American feature-length animated movie, 1937. It's one of the most beloved movies of all time.
The online world was on fire. It wasn't just the fans who were upset. Rumors say that Disney executives were also less than pleased with Zegler's remarks. The big question on everyone's mind was, what was Disney going to do about this situation? Well, sources close to the company reported that Disney quickly started pulling the plug on several of Zegler's promotional appearances. Could this be an attempt to stop the actress from making more controversial statements? Possibly, but the truth of the matter was that the studio was trying to prevent any more damage to the brand. The Snow White remake was already in hot water, and Disney clearly didn't want Zegler's remarks to make it boil over. And then, things took a turn for the worse. South Park, yes, you heard that right, jumped into the fray. The satirical show parodied the entire Snow White debacle in their DEI special, and the results were brutal. Rumors say that South Park went in hard, taking jabs at both Zegler's comments and the remake itself. The timing couldn't have been worse for Zegler or Disney. The show's parody went viral almost instantly, and the social media landscape was flooded with memes, jokes, and commentary, making it clear that the Snow White remake was quickly becoming a public joke. South Park's biting humor wasn't just your usual funny, it was scathing. People were now seriously questioning if this film could ever recover. According to rumors, the backlash hit Disney harder than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't just the fans in South Park. The controversy was now spreading like wildfire. Sources say that Disney executives, including CEO Bob Iger, were scrambling behind the scenes, frantically trying to figure out how to save this sinking ship of a movie. And as if things weren't bad enough, rumors claim that the studio was even considering major changes to the film itself. Now, according to insiders, this wasn't just some minor fix here and there. We're talking extensive reshoots and complete rewrites of the third act. Insiders have said that Disney's move to change the film's direction was a direct reaction to how bad things were getting. You don't call in the big guns and make drastic changes unless you're truly worried about the final product. And when a multi-million-dollar remake starts to look like a massive flop, drastic measures are exactly what you get. At this point, there's no denying it. The Snow White remake was turning into a train wreck. The public perception had shifted, and now the pressure was mounting for Disney to fix what they had broken. The remake was no longer just a new take on an old classic. It had become the symbol of everything that could go wrong when trying to update a beloved story for modern times. The Snow White disaster was no longer just a bad remake, it was a full-fledged Hollywood scandal. And with South Park making fun of the situation, the film's already bad reputation was getting worse by the day. This entire debacle was a stark reminder of just how complicated it can be to update classic stories, especially when you have an outspoken lead actress making bold statements about tradition. Rumors say that Disney's efforts to salvage the situation were only getting more desperate. The stakes had never been higher for the remake, and at this point, it seemed like they were willing to do whatever it took to keep the movie from crashing and burning. But let's be real, can any amount of rewrites and reshoots save this sinking ship now? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure. This is one Snow White story that no one will forget anytime soon. But wait, just when you thought the drama couldn't get any worse, it absolutely does. Behind the scenes, things were getting messier than anyone could have anticipated. Rumors say that there was growing tension between Rachel Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot, who portrays the evil queen in the Snow White remake. What was supposed to be a collaboration between two powerful actresses quickly turned into something awkward, strained, and downright uncomfortable. Fans who had been following every move of the production started noticing something strange on the red carpet, and at public events, the two seemed to avoid each other like the plague. Every appearance seemed to be filled with an invisible wall between them. Could there be a real feud brewing behind the scenes? Rumors say that the two were trying to keep it professional, but their interactions, or lack thereof, were impossible to ignore. The drama was building, and it looked like there was more to the story than we were being told. As if that wasn't enough to stir the pot, according to insiders, Disney was officially in crisis mode over the growing tension between Zegler and Gadot. But it wasn't just their strained relationship that had the studio on edge. Disney was genuinely concerned about the entire production falling apart at the seams. The Snow White remake was becoming less about a fresh take on a classic and more about a complete public relations disaster. Executives were panicking, and there were serious worries that the film might not only fail critically, but also bomb at the box office. This wasn't just a flop waiting to happen. It was tanking in real time, and Disney was trying desperately to save face. Every day brought new reports of internal meetings, frantic discussions, and rushed decisions. The growing negative perception of the film was now a huge liability, and Disney didn't know how to fix it. Critics were on the attack, and they were going after Zegler with everything they had. Her comments about modernizing Snow White and making the princess into a leader instead of someone who needs saving by the prince hit a nerve with a lot of people. Many believe that Zegler was disrespecting the 1937 classic, a film that had been the cornerstone of Disney's legacy for generations. According to rumors, the backlash was swift and unforgiving. Fans who had grown up with the original Snow White were not about to let it go without a fight. They took to social media, flooded forums, and voiced their outrage in a wave of criticism that could not be ignored. Some critics went as far as to say that Zegler was trying to rewrite the very heart of Disney history, and they weren't having any of it. The more she spoke out about making Snow White into a modern feminist icon, the more fans pushed back. People didn't want a new Snow White. They wanted the classic princess they grew up with. But the flip side of this controversy wasn't all negativity. There were still those who believed the remake had a fighting chance. Rumors say that there was a vocal group of supporters who argued that Snow White needed to evolve for today's audience. Let's face it, the traditional tale of a princess needing a prince to save her doesn't exactly resonate with today's culture, right? This group of defenders said that Ziegler's vision was necessary to make the story relevant again. According to them, it wasn't about disrespecting the original, but about updating Snow White for modern times. They believe the message of female empowerment and leadership was something that the new generation needed to hear. But even with these supporters, it was clear that Zegler was caught in the middle of a major cultural clash. She had become the face of this debate, caught between traditional fans who wanted their beloved Snow White left untouched, and the progressives who demanded change. And as the pressure mounted, rumors say that Zegler wasn't exactly thrilled with how Disney was handling the whole situation. Despite being the star of the film, it seemed like the studio was not backing her up as much as she had hoped. As the controversy escalated and her name was dragged through the mud, Zegler reportedly felt abandoned by the very company that had cast her in this high-profile role. She was no longer just dealing with the public's backlash. She felt like Disney was throwing her under the bus. According to rumors, Zegler was furious with Disney's silence in the face of mounting criticism. Instead of standing by her and defending her stance, the studio's actions seemed to suggest they were more interested in keeping the peace with angry fans than supporting their lead actress. And then, things got even more intense. Rumors say that Zegler had even considered taking legal action against Disney. You read that right. She was reportedly looking into suing the company for the cancellation of her promotional appearances, which, according to her contract, were supposed to happen. Insiders claimed that Zegler felt her rights were being violated and that Disney was making decisions without consulting her. Imagine being a star in a huge Disney production and feeling like your voice didn't matter. Zegler had signed a contract, and she expected Disney to honor it. But when the studio pulled her from various events, she saw it as a breach of trust. The situation was spiraling quickly, and what was supposed to be a celebratory remake of a classic animated film was quickly turning into a Hollywood disaster. The once bright hopes for a modern Snow White were now clouded by controversy, strained relationships, and deep uncertainty about the film's future. It's a mess, folks, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. With legal battles potentially looming on the horizon and a growing divide between the film's supporters and critics, the Snow White remake is shaping up to be one of the most chaotic productions in Hollywood history. Will it be able to recover from all the drama, or will it be another failed attempt at updating a beloved classic? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, this story is far from over. Now, as we look at the fallout from this entire mess, one thing is crystal clear. The Snow White remake has turned into a masterclass in what not to do when it comes to modernizing a beloved classic. What happens when you try to mess with the nostalgic magic that's been ingrained in generations of Disney fans? And what happens when a star, a huge star, gets caught up in the middle of a storm of controversy? It's not just a bad situation, it's a recipe for disaster. And to make matters worse, South Park's savage, biting parody of the whole debacle didn't just add fuel to the fire, it exploded it into an inferno. The public perception of this remake is now irrevocably cemented as one of the most troubled productions Hollywood has seen in years. It's like a cautionary tale on how not to bring a classic to life in the modern era. Can you believe it? Now, take a step back and ask yourself, what do you really think about all of this? Is Rachel Zegler just a victim of bad timing, thrown into a chaotic situation with the wrong comments at the wrong time? Or, as some critics suggest, did she actually set herself up for failure when she boldly declared that Snow White needed to be reimagined and that the classic story was no longer relevant? The backlash was intense, and it's hard not to see how those words caused a wild ripple effect. But according to rumors, Zegler's not the only one feeling the heat from this massive storm. Disney executives, co-stars, and others involved in the film are reportedly feeling the intense pressure too. But here's the kicker. The scandal's far from over, folks. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to uncover about the chaos, the drama, and the fallout from this disastrous production. And as things continue to unravel, the one thing we know for sure is that this entire situation is a case study in how not to update a beloved story. So stay tuned to Pop Flash as we continue to bring you the latest on the wild world of Hollywood, where the scandals just keep getting juicier. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.